Welcome to the infamous edition of the Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched first-person simulation done through creative storytelling of history's most infamous people. Now, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the podcast. Let's start at the absolute beginning, where the public narrative hasn't yet distorted who you were. When and where were you born, and what was your given name?
Hi, Calvin. I was born William George Bonin on January 8, 1947, in the small town of Willimantic, Connecticut.
What was your hometown and home life like as a child?
It was incredibly chaotic and dark, to be completely honest. My family life was defined by extreme neglect and abuse. Both of my parents were heavy drinkers and addictive gamblers. My father was a very violent, abusive alcoholic, and my mother suffered from intense mood swings, spending nearly all her spare time and money playing bingo. They would abandon my brothers and me for long stretches of time, completely forgetting to feed us. We were always hungry, running around in dirty clothes, and eventually, my mother placed us in an orphanage just to keep us away from my father's violent outbursts.
Was there a story behind your name, or a nickname that stuck with you?
The public didn't know me by William. Once the bodies started turning up, the media and the public dubbed me the Freeway Killer and the Freeway Strangler because of where the victims were found.
What were you like as a child, and how many years of schooling did you actually attend?
As a kid, I was deeply troubled, tracking back to the extreme abuse I endured at home. School was a mess for me. I had constant behavioral problems and was heavily teased by the other kids. I didn't have a conventional or long-lasting academic history because my behavioral and psychological issues kept escalating, eventually leading me to juvenile detention and away from regular schooling quite early.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
When I was just 7 years old, I made the choice to start stealing metal tags off license plates. It seemed like a petty, insignificant childhood infraction at the time, but it set off a disastrous chain reaction.
Let's talk about your early run-ins with the law. Before the world knew your name for your most infamous actions, what was your very first arrest or interaction with law enforcement? And what were the consequences?
That petty theft of the license plates got me caught and referred to juvenile hall when I was 7. That placement completely sealed my fate. While in that detention facility, I was severely abused and sodomized by older boys. It twisted my psychology entirely. Later as an adult, after serving in the Air Force as a tail gunner in Vietnam, I had my first major adult arrest in 1969 for sexually assaulting young boys. The legal consequence back then was that I was sent to a Atascadero State Hospital where doctors diagnosed me with manic depressive illness, and I stayed locked away in prison psychiatric facilities until 1975.
At what moment did you realize your name would never be forgotten?
It hit when the media frenzy exploded in Southern California between 1979 and 1980. Young boys and men were disappearing, and their bodies were being found exposed right beside the major highways. The sheer panic gripped the entire region, and gay rights activists even put up a $50,000 reward for information. Watching the news, I knew the identity of the Freeway Killer was becoming a permanent part of California's darkest history.
Did fame make you more dangerous, or did it simply expose who you already were?
The notoriety didn't change my desires. It just played out alongside a terrifying escalation. I had customized a Ford Econoline camper van, covering the back windows, removing the interior door handles, and stashing nylon cords and weapons inside. The public exposure didn't stop me. My urge to hunt, bind, and control just grew more ravenous during that single year I was active.
Who do you believe betrayed you first? A person, society, or your own instincts?
My own accomplices turned on me, but I also sabotaged myself. I didn't work alone. I had 4 different accomplices who helped me carry out these horrific crimes, including Vernon Butts and Gregory Miley. When the law finally trapped us, the people I trusted to help me hide the bodies and share the secrets ended up giving statements and cooperating with the state to save themselves.
What was your most unique habit or a random fact about you that would surprise people?
People might be surprised to know that, despite the horrific nature of the crimes, I drove a truck for a living and managed to blend in as a seemingly ordinary guy. Also, a bizarre detail from my crime spree is that after robbing the victims, I would frequently take their wallets and keep them.
What did the public never understand about the pressure you were under at the time?
During my trials and subsequent time in custody, my defense team tried to show the world the sheer psychological damage I carried from my own horrific childhood torture. They argued that the extreme abuse had rendered me legally insane, but the public and the prosecution weren't interested in the internal pressure or the madness. The prosecutors simply labeled me the most arch-evil person who ever existed.
Did you have any known rivalries that defined your career?
My primary adversaries were the task forces and prosecutors of Los Angeles and Orange counties. It was a massive, coordinated effort by Southern California law enforcement to track me down, as well as the intense pressure from community advocates who were desperate to stop the highway dumpings.
What personal battles were you fighting privately while the world was watching?
Privately, I was fighting deep-seated psychiatric disorders and what my defense teams described as organic brain damage stemming from my early life. I spent my days operating under a normal facade as a truck driver, while completely losing the battle to the dark, manic impulses raging inside my head.
What was your darkest moment, and was there ever a time you wanted to walk away from it all?
The darkest moments were the crimes themselves, driven by a burning desire that I felt completely helpless to stop. There wasn't a moment I tried to walk away. Instead, my hunger grew each day and night, turning into a compulsive need for control that completely consumed me until the police physically stopped me.
When the law finally closed in, how exactly were you brought to justice? Walk me through the final arrest, the charges that ultimately stuck, and the legal outcome of your trials.
The law finally caught up to me on June 11th, 1980. The police caught me red-handed in the middle of raping a young boy inside my van. That final arrest blew the whole case open and tied me directly to the highway murders. I faced two massive trials. In Los Angeles County, the jury found me guilty, and on March 12, 1982, I was convicted of 10 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances, robbery, and sodomy, receiving the death penalty. Then in Orange County, I was tried again and convicted of 4 more counts of first-degree murder and robbery, resulting in a second death sentence. In total, I was convicted of 14 murders, though I ultimately confessed to 21.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you, and what part of your story has been exaggerated the most?
The biggest confusion during that era was that the Freeway Killer was just one elusive psychopath moving across counties. In reality, the media had lumped a few different unrelated serial killers operating in the same geographic area under that single nickname, though I was certainly the most prolific driver among them.
What is the biggest misconception people have about your life?
People often look at monsters like me and assume we just appear out of nowhere fully formed. The misconception is ignoring the severe, institutionalized failure and extreme childhood trauma that broke my mind long before I ever bought that van.
What would surprise people most about your ordinary human side?
Probably how relaxed and normal I could appear to the people close to me. Even during my 14 years on death row at San Quentin, those who visited me toward the end noted I could be calm, quiet, and just spend time talking with friends, completely detached from the monster the public knew.
When, where, and how did you pass away?
I passed away on February 23, 1996, at San Quentin State Prison in California. I was executed by lethal injection at the age of 49, becoming the very first inmate in California history to be executed using that specific method.
Was your downfall caused more by your own flaws or by the world changing around you?
It was entirely my own horrific flaws and actions. The world didn't trap me. My own depravity, my choice to indulge those sick urges, and the trail of grief I left behind legally and morally guaranteed my absolute destruction.
What past regrets did you carry with you to the end? If you could erase one decision from your life, would you? Or was it necessary to become who you were?
I carried the weight of what I did, but my documented focus at the end wasn't on erasing a single choice. It was about the message left behind. In my final statements to the warden, I emphasized that I didn't believe the death penalty solved the underlying problems, because young people simply act as they see adults acting, rather than how they are told to act.
What scared you more, getting caught, losing power, or being forgotten?
Near the end, the fear shifted. I wasn't fighting the reality of the execution anymore. I told reporters the night before that I had accepted what was coming and made my peace with it. The real anxiety was the devastating impact it all had on my remaining family, especially making sure my mother didn't have to witness my final moments.
When you look back now, do you see yourself as the villain, the hero, or something in between?
There is no in-between or heroism in what I did. Factually, historically, and by my own ultimate admissions on death row, I lived as a master predator who brought unspeakable horror to innocent lives. I am, without question, the villain of this story.
Do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before we sign off?
Just that I know people look for closure in an execution, but losing a loved one to murder is devastating, and an execution doesn't magically erase that pain. I just hope people look at the cycles of abuse that create people like me and realize something has to change early on.
And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, do better with the life you have been given and choose to do good in this life. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.